Hello, everyone. I am Rebecca Meacham, and I am here to talk to you about the Rising Phoenix contest as part of the History of Sheepshead Review. So let's get started. I'll talk about how we moved from that very first issue in 2003, spring 2003, into working through finer points of hosting a contest that occurred every spring. Uh, and what that meant for cover art, as well as what we all kind of call the great grandpa fiasco. So here we go. So starting in about 2004, and this is an issue from 2005, the editors and students were meeting at every spring as part of a class. At that point, English 324, and also it had a section of English 224 at that time, where it was a class that met every spring. And so even though the issue came out twice a year, it only had a class component in the spring at that time. Nowadays, it's a class every time there's an issue, which at this point is fall, spring, and then now summer. So in any case, what happened was we developed this contest, and this contest was spring only, and it was to encourage interest and excellent submissions for the journal. At this time, the journal was probably getting maybe 100 or 200 submissions per year, if that. It would barely get any submissions in something like a genre like nonfiction. Most of the submissions were coming from our campus, and the quality was in and out, right, as you would expect from any journal of the arts. So what you're seeing here is a typical first issue or early issue from the early 2000s when the journal got started again, where the Rising Phoenix contest attracted submissions from in all genres, visual arts, nonfiction, fiction, and poetry from all over the community outside of Green Bay, as well as on campus. And the winner of the visual arts, as chosen by an outside judge, somebody that the editors or I had approached and said, would you judge a Rising Phoenix contest for us? The editor would select the best visual arts. And at that time, we had only visual arts as a category for winning, as well as writing, all writing, poetry, nonfiction, and fiction. So 2 divisions. We had a celebrity judge, outside judge for each of those. Whichever entry won the visual arts Rising Phoenix contest offered in spring would get the cover. That was the prize. So your image would appear on the cover. On the inside of the journal or elsewhere in the journal, you would see the judges' comments for that winning entry for the cover. You might see some comments possibly from the artist, him or their self. And then on the inside of the journal, you'd also see the writing winner, who run the writing and what the judge thought of that writing. There'd be judges' comments, and there'd also be maybe a blurb from the winner as well. On the back cover here, you can see Matt Sorensen, who I believe was a student at the time and won that cover for the Dragonfly, did have a statement. And then also Mike Ezerkamp, who actually is a local Green Bay, City of Green Bay artist, but was not a UWGB student. The contest was open and he won, has the statement here as well. On the inside of the issue, what would happen was you'd have these comments, here's what won, the judge was Stephen Perkins, here's what he thought, this is why he chose it. And you'd also, if the timeline was early enough, that winning image would help thematize the inside of the issue. So the designer for this issue used the dragonfly wing. Layout editor was using the dragonfly wing, uses the dragonfly from the cover throughout to thematize. At this point, the interior of the journal is black and white, and that's what we can afford to do. But you may have seen we did move to a full color cover at this point. We're still pretty thin at about 80 pages or 88. And you can see here the judges' comments, as well as the winning entry printed alongside it, and sometimes even comments from that winner. This is just another way that the journal looked at this time. So this is a slight digression, but just to show you more of this issue, how these the issues thematized, but also there's something interesting if you notice. In our early issues, we also tried to take pains to include artist statements and contributors notes, which you can see right here. Sometimes we had bios of the artists or writers at the end of the issue, which is pretty typical for journals of the arts, and it's something that they do a lot. We don't do that now. We could, but we haven't in a long time. And you can see we start to get fancier about it. This was an incredible designer for the series of issues. Changchen Seili was amazing. And you can see the Rising Phoenix for that spring issue. Again, we came out fall and spring, issues every fall and spring, but the Rising Phoenix gets the cover. Pretty cool. And again, on the inside, we see that the writing winner, and this is again, a local high school teacher who won the writing division as judged by Denise Sweet, who was Wisconsin Poet Laureate at that time, won the contest. And you can see also the thematizing going on here. The cover has someone with a pipe, so the visual element gets kind of pulled through, and there's smoke here and all these cool things. In the back, as I mentioned, you can see contributors' notes. This is in the last few pages, what's called back matter. And again, we see a general emphasis. This is not a Rising Phoenix winner, but this is just sort of a little tiny digression in this section. You can see an emphasis on student-made art or Rising Phoenix made art. So again, that's not always necessarily a student. So this is a fall issue. And I was just about to start maternity leave. There's like this little sort of aside here, and I ended up having a cesarean section. So this kind of cracked me up in terms of like the timing here of like a surgical table. And then like I had to go leave in November to go have a baby, and this issue came out not long after that. So you can see what the cover looks like here. And sometimes, again, the design of the issue is kind of interesting. If you've got a medical theme, well, sure, why not have syringes as your thematizing element on the inside? A little edgy, I guess. And so you can see throughout the years, this is another way that the juror statement's added in. In this one of the last versions, I think this might have been the last time that we had outside for the university winners eligible for the Rising Phoenix. And another funny thing, just as an aside in my life, is that this was the issue that followed my maternity leave. It was a baby, and it's my baby. This is not my baby. My baby didn't look like this. But what's interesting about this cover is that it shows, again, a real community connection. It's the Rising Phoenix winner. And this one in particular, this particular winning entry was done by community artists, not students from UWGB. And they took an image, and then one of them had photographed the baby, and then the other one did ballpoint over it. So it was a really unusual collaboration in that way. So all of these things continue on their way for a long time. Fall issue may or may not have student art on the cover. Spring issue always features the winner of the Rising Phoenix on the cover. It's part of the prize package to the degree that there is one. And so we have this particular kind of convergence that happens in spring 2011. The Rising Phoenix contest is held. It's now limited to only UW Green Bay students may enter it. So every student who submits to Sheepshead Review is automatically eligible for that contest. And so what happens then is editors choose works that they'd like to send on to the Rising Phoenix judge or judges at this time. And then that work is published and put into the journal. And so there you go. Okay, so in this case, the winning selection was a great photo by a student that was called, I think, Grandpa in his studio. However, because of the timing of trying to wait for the judge's selection to come in to thematize that issue, as you've been seeing, the cover art sometimes determines, will there be syringes or pipes or other things like that? In this case, the timing was not that great. So in addition to the fact that the cover art maybe is a bit at odds with our traditional age undergraduate population, perhaps the envisioned traditional age undergraduate readership of the journal, there's some odds here going on. In addition to that, the layout editor hadn't any idea of what this was going to be, what the image would be, was waiting on the pick from the judges, and these things take time. And he'd already gone ahead and had chosen a theme of pixels and pixel sheep, which, you know, doesn't exactly go with Grandpa in his studio. They're very, very different. So this created kind of a problem with the disjunction and the disconnect between the timing, the sort of pressure that this put on the judges and our staff, and the sort of a way that a layout designer or layout editor or designer of the issue could kind of follow their dream or bliss. I mean, they're kind of sort of narrowed to what might that cover be, assuming they can get a hold of it in time. That created a lot of problems. And so Grandpa in his workshop sort of marked the end of the prize being for the Rising Phoenix contest being cover placement. Instead, as you'll see in later videos, what we tend to do is put this as a prominent, feature this art as a prominent page on the inside of the journal. The Rising Phoenix winners in all 4 genres now have their own section, and I'm sure you can see this in issues that you'll be looking at shortly. That concludes that segment of the Great Grandpa Fiasco and why we changed some things around in this particular configuration of how we do the Rising Phoenix contest. The Rising Phoenix contest does still run, but we have definitely changed how it operates at this time. Okay, that's it for this segment. More soon.